I'm Evelyn, 67 years old, a retired teacher from a small Pennsylvania town. After 40 years of careful saving, my husband and I had built a comfortable nest egg for our golden years. When he passed, that money became my security blanket. Then my son Jeffrey introduced me to his girlfriend Alicia. Within months, my life savings vanished along with them. But the hero of my story isn't who you'd expect. It's my 13-year-old grandson, Lucas. Before I tell you how my world fell apart and how my brilliant grandson put it back together, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had someone you trust break your heart. After teaching third grade for 36 years, I thought I'd seen it all. Children can be unpredictable, but they taught me to expect the unexpected. Nothing prepared me for what happened in my retirement years, though. I've been widowed for 8 years now. My husband Frank passed away from a sudden heart attack. We'd been married for 42 years, and losing him left a hole in my life I thought could never be filled. I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in Millfield, Pennsylvania. It's the same home where we raised our only son, Jeffrey. After Frank died, I considered downsizing, but this place holds too many memories. The garden Frank planted, the marks on the kitchen doorframe showing Jeffrey's growth over the years, the squeaky third step on the staircase we never fixed because it alerted us when Jeffrey tried sneaking out as a teenager. This house is more than walls and a roof. It's the physical embodiment of our family history. Jeffrey is 43 now. He divorced his wife Amanda when their son Lucas was only 7. The split wasn't amicable, and custody arrangements were tense for years. Jeffrey works in pharmaceutical sales and travels frequently, so Lucas primarily lives with his mother in Philadelphia, about 2 hours away. Despite the distance, Lucas and I have always been close. He spends most school breaks and at least one weekend a month with me. Lucas isn't your typical 13-year-old. While other boys his age are obsessed with video games and sports, Lucas has always been fascinated by computers and problem-solving. By age 10, he was helping me troubleshoot my laptop and smartphone issues. He explained complex technology concepts in ways I could understand, never making me feel foolish for my questions. His patience reminded me of Frank, who had the same gentle way of teaching. The first time I heard about Alicia was last September. Jeffrey called me sounding more excited than I'd heard him in years. "Mom, I've met someone incredible," he gushed over the phone. "Her name is Alicia. She's smart, beautiful, and she actually laughs at my terrible jokes." I was thrilled for him. Jeffrey hadn't seriously dated anyone since his divorce 6 years earlier. He'd become somewhat withdrawn, focusing entirely on work and his limited time with Lucas. Hearing joy in his voice again warmed my heart. Over the next few weeks, Jeffrey called frequently, always eager to share another detail about Alicia. She was 35, originally from Seattle, and worked as a business consultant specializing in international markets. They'd met at a pharmaceutical conference in Chicago, where she was representing clients. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Whenever I asked specific questions about Alicia's background or family, Jeffrey's answers were vague. When I inquired about her previous consulting projects, he deflected, saying her work was complicated and confidential. At the time, I chalked it up to the excitement of new love making him distracted. Things moved quickly, alarmingly so. Within 2 months of meeting, Alicia had moved into Jeffrey's house in Lancaster. When I expressed mild surprise at the speed of their relationship, Jeffrey brushed off my concerns. "When you know, Mom," he said. "Dad proposed to you after 3 months, remember? He was right, but that was a different time, and Frank and I had grown up in the same small town, known each other's families our whole lives. I finally met Alicia at Thanksgiving. She was striking tall with sleek, dark hair and an easy, confident smile. She brought an expensive bottle of wine and charmed me with stories of her travels around the world. Yet something felt off. Her attention to me seemed overly focused, almost studied. When Jeffrey left the room, her questions shifted to my retirement and financial planning. "Jeffrey mentioned you've done really well with your investments," she said, swirling her wine. I'm always looking for tips for my clients. Any secrets to share? I gave polite general answers, but her interest in my finances continued throughout the evening. She asked about my pension plan, whether I kept money in high-yield accounts, even whether I owned my home outright or had a mortgage. Each question came wrapped in casual conversation, but by the end of the night, I realized she knew more about my financial situation than most family members. Over Christmas, Lucas visited for a week. Jeffrey and Alicia joined us for Christmas Day. While we prepared dinner, Lucas pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Grandma, what do you think of Dad's new girlfriend?" he asked, his voice low. "She seems nice," I replied, not wanting to share my unease with my grandson. "Your dad certainly seems happy." Lucas frowned. "She asks a lot of questions, and she's always on her phone when Dad isn't looking. Different phone than the one she uses around him." Children notice things adults miss. I should have paid more attention to Lucas's observation, but I didn't want to spoil the holiday with suspicions that might be unfounded. Instead, I gave Lucas an extra cookie and changed the subject. By February, Jeffrey's personality had subtly shifted. He called less frequently. When we did speak, he seemed distracted, sometimes defensive. Our usual Sunday dinner tradition became sporadic with last-minute cancellations. When they did visit, Alicia dominated conversations, often speaking for Jeffrey. My son, once opinionated and confident, now deferred to her on almost everything. The last time I saw them before everything fell apart was in early April. They came for dinner on a Sunday, arriving an hour late. Jeffrey looked tired with dark circles under his eyes. Alicia, however, was animated and dressed expensively in a designer outfit I knew my son couldn't afford on his salary. Over dessert, they dropped their bombshell. "We're planning to travel for a few months," Alicia announced. "There are some amazing business opportunities in South America that we want to explore." "Both of you?" I asked, surprised. "What about your job, Jeffrey?" "I've taken a leave of absence," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "Alicia's connections could set us up for life, Mom. It's an opportunity I can't pass up." I asked about details, the business plan, their itinerary, how long they'd be gone. Their answers were vague and rehearsed. When I expressed concern, Alicia placed her hand over mine. "We've got everything figured out, Evelyn," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You don't need to worry about anything." As they left that evening, Jeffrey hugged me longer than usual. Now I wonder if he was silently apologizing for what he was about to do. The morning everything changed began like any other. I woke up at 6:30, made coffee, and checked my email on my tablet. That's when I noticed the first alert from my bank. Then another, and another. By the time I finished scrolling through all the notifications, I felt physically ill. My checking account had been emptied. My savings account showed a zero balance. Even my retirement fund, which required special authorization to access, had been liquidated. In total, $387,000, the culmination of 40 years of saving Frank's life insurance and careful investing, was gone. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial Jeffrey's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. By the 10th call, I was leaving incoherent, tearful messages. I called his work only to be told he had taken personal leave. I even tried calling some of his friends, but no one had heard from him. By noon, I was sitting at my kitchen table with 2 police officers. Officer Ramirez took notes, while her partner, Officer Bennett, gently asked questions about my accounts, who had access to them, and when I'd last spoken with my son. Their sympathetic expressions told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a bank error. This was theft. "Mrs. Carter, we're going to transfer your case to Detective Jackson in our Financial Crimes Unit," Officer Ramirez said. "This appears to be a significant case of elder financial abuse." "My son wouldn't steal from me," I insisted, even as doubt crept into my mind. "There must be some explanation." 3 hours later, Detective Jackson sat in my living room, his weathered face grim as he showed me airline manifests. Jeffrey Carter and Alicia Delgado boarded a flight to Buenos Aires last night at 11:40 p.m., he said. They had a connecting flight to Santiago, Chile. The room spun around me. That's impossible, I whispered. He wouldn't. I've seen this pattern before, Mrs. Carter, Detective Jackson said gently. It appears to be what we call a romance scam, but with a twist. Usually these scammers target the elderly directly. In your case, they got to you through your son. He explained how these scams work. A charming, sophisticated person identifies a target with access to significant funds. They create a whirlwind romance, isolate their victim from friends and family, and then convince them to transfer money for a supposed investment or emergency. By the time the victim realizes what's happened, the scammer and the money are long gone. We'll put out international notices, Detective Jackson assured me. But I want to be honest with you. Recovery in these cases is difficult, especially when they've already left the country. After the detective left, I sat in my living room as darkness fell, not bothering to turn on the lights. The betrayal was too enormous to process. My own son had stolen my life savings. The money that represented decades of careful planning that was supposed to see me through my final years was gone. And Jeffrey, my only child, the boy I had raised alone after Frank died, had taken it. The next few days passed in a blur. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Friends and neighbors stopped by with casseroles and concerned faces, but their kindness only emphasized my shame. How could I admit that my own son had done this to me? How could I face their pity, Amanda called, when she heard what happened. Despite their difficult divorce, she was genuinely concerned. She offered to send Lucas to stay with me for a while, thinking his presence might help. I initially refused, not wanting to burden a child with my problems, but Amanda insisted Lucas was asking to come. He arrived the next day, his backpack stuffed with clothes and his laptop. Lucas moved quietly around the house, bringing me tea I didn't drink and making sandwiches I couldn't eat. He didn't ask many questions, but I could feel his watchful eyes taking everything in. On the third day of his stay, as I sat staring blankly at unpaid bills spread across the kitchen table, Lucas spoke up. "Grandma, can I see the bank statements and the police reports?" I looked at him in surprise. "Why would you want to see those, sweetheart?" "I might notice something important," he said with a seriousness that seemed beyond his years. "I'm good at finding patterns." I initially dismissed his interest as a child's curiosity, or perhaps a way to feel useful in a helpless situation. What could a 13-year-old possibly do that the police couldn't? But Lucas was persistent, and in my state of emotional exhaustion, I eventually relented, showing him the paperwork Detective Jackson had left with me. I didn't realize then that this moment would be the turning point in our story, or that my grandson's quiet request would set in motion events that would change everything. The day after I showed Lucas the financial documents, I woke to find the spare bedroom transformed. Lucas had somehow managed to rearrange the furniture, setting up a desk with his laptop in the center of the room. The walls were covered with printed papers, sticky notes connecting different points with handwritten notes. It looked like something from a detective movie. "Lucas, what is all this?" I asked, standing in the doorway. He swiveled in the desk chair, his expression serious. "I'm tracking the money, Grandma." I stepped closer, examining the papers he'd taped to the wall. Bank statements, account numbers, transaction histories, and what looked like social media profiles were arranged in a complex pattern. "Honey, the police are handling this," I said gently. "This isn't something you need to worry about." "The police have hundreds of cases," Lucas replied. "They can't focus just on this, but I can." I was about to insist he take it all down when he turned his laptop screen toward me. "Look what I found already." On the screen was a social media profile for someone named Daniela Morales. The photo showed Alicia, but with differently styled hair and makeup. "That's Alicia," I said, confused. "No, Grandma, Alicia doesn't exist. This is Daniela Morales. She's used at least 4 different names in the past 3 years. I found her by running the photos from Dad's social media through a reverse image search, then cross-referencing with facial recognition software." I stared at my grandson in shock. "How do you know how to do that?" Lucas shrugged. "YouTube tutorials, online courses. It's not that hard if you know where to look." Over the next hour, Lucas walked me through his methodology with a clarity and precision that left me astonished. He had traced bank transfers, identified IP addresses from emails sent to my accounts, and compiled a history of Alicia's, or rather Daniela's, online presence. "She's done this before," Lucas explained, pointing to news articles he'd found from Wisconsin, Florida, and Oregon. "Different names each time, but the same pattern. She targets middle-aged men who have access to their parents' finances. The police in these states never connected the cases because she changes her appearance and identity each time." I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, trying to absorb what my grandson was showing me. "Lucas, this is incredible. But it's also way beyond what a child should be dealing with." "I'm not a child," he said, with quiet determination. "I'm your grandson, and nobody messes with my family." That afternoon, we visited Detective Jackson at the police station, bringing Lucas's research with us. The detective's expression shifted from polite indulgence to genuine surprise as Lucas methodically presented his findings. "You did all this?" Detective Jackson asked, examining the timeline Lucas had created. Lucas nodded. "The money was moved through a series of accounts, first to a bank in Delaware, then to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, and finally to a bank in Argentina. But they made mistakes. They used the same email address for 2 of the transfers, and they accessed Dad's accounts from their home IP address before they left." Detective Jackson looked at me, then back at Lucas. "This is impressive work, son. Really impressive. But I need to ask where you learned to do this kind of digital forensics." "I'm interested in cybersecurity," Lucas replied simply. "I take online courses." After we left the police station, Detective Jackson promised to follow up on Lucas's leads and add the information to their investigation. He seemed both impressed by Lucas's work and concerned about a child's involvement in such a case. "Your grandson has talent," he told me quietly as we left. "But make sure he doesn't go too far with this. These are potentially dangerous people." I nodded, suddenly worried about what Lucas might be getting himself into. On the drive home, I tried to set boundaries. "Lucas, I appreciate everything you've done, but I want you to step back now. Let the police handle it from here." He agreed too easily, which should have been my first clue that he had no intention of stopping. The financial reality of my situation was becoming increasingly dire. Without my savings, I couldn't cover my monthly expenses for long. I had a small pension from the school district, but it barely covered utilities and groceries, let alone the mortgage. I called the bank to explain my situation, but their sympathy didn't extend to waiving payments. I had 30 days before they would initiate foreclosure proceedings. I began applying for part-time jobs, though the prospects for a 67-year-old former teacher were slim. I canceled my internet service, then remembered Lucas needed it for schoolwork while staying with me, so I reinstated it, but downgraded to the cheapest plan. Every penny required careful consideration now. Through it all, Lucas remained strangely confident. He spent hours on his computer each night, and though I questioned him about it, his answers were vague. "Just following up on some leads, Grandma. Don't worry." About a week after our visit to Detective Jackson, I was awakened at midnight by the soft glow of Lucas's laptop screen as he sat cross-legged on the living room floor typing furiously. "Lucas, it's after midnight. You should be in bed." He looked up, and in the blue light of the screen, his expression was oddly adult. I almost have her grandma. I've been tracking their digital footprint. They're in Santiago, but they're planning to move again soon. Lucas, I said firmly, sitting beside him. This has to stop. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you're 13. This isn't your responsibility. He closed his laptop partially, but not before I glimpsed what looked like a chat window. Grandma, don't worry. I handled it. What does that mean? I asked, sudden alarm rising in my chest. What did you do? Nothing illegal, he assured me. Just some digital detective work. Trust me. I wanted to demand more answers, but something in his calm confidence made me hesitate. This wasn't the recklessness of a child playing detective. There was a methodical assurance in his manner that reminded me startlingly of Frank, who had always approached problems with quiet determination. We'll talk about this in the morning, I finally said. But I mean it. Lucas, this ends now. I don't want you getting into trouble. He nodded solemnly. Good night, Grandma. Things will look better soon. I promise. As I lay in bed afterward, unable to sleep, I wondered what my grandson was really doing on that laptop, and whether I should be stopping him more forcefully or placing more trust in his unusual abilities. The waiting was the hardest part. Days stretched into weeks, with little progress reported from Detective Jackson. Each morning, I checked my empty bank accounts, hoping for a miracle. Each afternoon, I searched job listings, applied for assistance programs, and calculated how much longer I could survive on my dwindling resources. My friends from church organized a meal train, taking turns bringing dinners to my house. While I appreciated their kindness, accepting charity was difficult after a lifetime of self-sufficiency. Neighbors offered small loans to tide me over, but I refused. I couldn't bear the thought of owing money I had no guarantee of repaying. The weekly calls with Detective Jackson became a painful ritual. He was always polite, always professional, but the updates were minimal. International law enforcement had been notified. Requests for information had been filed with banks in Argentina and Chile. The process was slow, complicated by jurisdictional issues and privacy laws. These things take time, Mrs. Carter, he would say. We haven't given up. After each call, I'd sit in my kitchen, staring at the fading wallpaper Frank and I had hung together 20 years ago, wondering how my life had collapsed so completely. I'd raised Jeffrey alone after Frank died, working extra jobs to ensure he could go to college without debt. I'd been at every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference. How had my loving son turned into someone who could steal his mother's life savings? Lucas remained my steadfast companion through it all. He had convinced his mother to let him stay with me until things stabilized, as he put it. Amanda herself, shocked by Jeffrey's actions, agreed it might be good for both of us. She arranged for Lucas to temporarily attend the local middle school, just a 10-minute walk from my house. During this time, Lucas maintained his mysterious confidence. Though he'd stopped overtly investigating in front of me, I sometimes caught him quickly minimizing windows on his laptop when I entered a room. He spent hours texting and typing, but whenever I asked what he was doing, his answer was always some version of just homework or playing games. One evening, about 3 weeks after Jeffrey and Alicia disappeared, Lucas and I were washing dishes after dinner, when he suddenly said, "I've been talking to her grandma." I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. Talking to who? Alicia? Or Daniela? Whatever her real name is. I set the plate down carefully, my hands trembling. What do you mean, talking to her? How? Lucas dried his hands and led me to the living room where his ever-present laptop sat on the coffee table. I created a fake identity online, a wealthy older man looking for investment opportunities. I found her on a forum where she recruits victims. She thinks I'm Harold Jenkins, a 72-year-old widower with a lot of money to invest. I stared at my grandson in horror. Lucas, Do you have any idea how dangerous this is? These people are criminals. They stole hundreds of thousands of dollars if they figure out who you really are. They won't, he said with absolute certainty. I'm using a VPN and an encrypted connection. All my messages go through servers in different countries. There's no way to trace it back to us. But why? What could you possibly hope to accomplish? Lucas opened his laptop and showed me a chat conversation. The language was financial jargon I barely understood, but I recognized Alicia's writing style in the responses. I'm tracking their location every time she logs in, he explained, and I'm gathering evidence of their scam operations. She thinks she's grooming a new victim, but she's actually giving me everything the police need to find them. Does Detective Jackson know you're doing this? I demanded. Lucas hesitated. Not exactly. I'm being careful, Grandma. I promise. I should have put a stop to it immediately. I should have called Detective Jackson, confiscated Lucas's laptop, ended this dangerous game. But a part of me admired his resourcefulness, his determination to right the wrong done to our family. And truthfully, I was desperate. The official channels seemed to be moving at a glacial pace, while my financial situation grew more precarious by the day. You have to promise me you won't take any risks, I finally said. And if anything seems dangerous, you'll stop immediately and tell me. I promise, Lucas said solemnly. I know what I'm doing, Grandma. This is what I'm good at. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. I checked my primary bank account, as I did each morning, preparing for the familiar ache of seeing the zero balance. Instead, there was $5,000. I checked the transaction history, but the deposit was listed only as transfer external account, with no further details. I called Lucas immediately, interrupting his school day. Did you do something? There's money in my account. There was a pause before he answered. It's starting to work, Grandma. Don't spend it yet, and don't tell Detective Jackson. Not until we get the rest. Lucas, where did this money come from? Did you hack into something? Are we going to get in trouble? It's our money, he said firmly. I'm just getting it back. Trust me, Grandma. This is just the beginning. I hung up staring at the bank balance on my screen. $5,000 was a fraction of what had been stolen, but it was also the first glimmer of hope in a month of despair. What exactly had my 13-year-old grandson done, and should I be putting a stop to it or encouraging him? After nearly 6 weeks of waiting and watching my grandson's mysterious digital activities, I finally demanded answers. Lucas had been increasingly secretive, spending hours in the spare bedroom with his laptop, the door firmly closed. The only reassurance I had was the steadily increasing balance in my bank account. Small deposits appearing every few days now, totaling nearly $30,000. Enough, Lucas, I said one evening, standing in the doorway of his makeshift office. I need to know exactly what you're doing and how this money is appearing in my account. He sighed, then nodded as if he'd been expecting this confrontation. Close the door, Grandma. It's time I explained everything. For the next hour, Lucas walked me through his elaborate plan. He had been using his knowledge of digital forensics and social engineering to track Jeffrey and Alicia's movements and recover portions of the stolen money. His explanation was filled with technical terms I barely understood: proxy servers, blockchain transactions, digital breadcrumbs, but the core of his strategy was clear. I created 3 different online identities, he explained, showing me profiles on his laptop. Harold Jenkins, the potential victim I told you about. Emma Rodriguez, a competing scammer who admires Alicia's work. And Steve Blackwell, an anonymous cryptocurrency broker. Through these fabricated personas, Lucas had been gathering information about Jeffrey and Alicia's location and their network of accounts. He had anonymously reported their activities to financial authorities in multiple countries, triggering freezes on some of their accounts. Most impressively, He had managed to gain access to several of the accounts they were using to move the stolen money. Dad uses the same passwords for everything, Lucas explained. I've helped him with his computer problems for years, so I know most of them. Once I got into his email, I could request password resets for other accounts. But how are you getting the money back? I asked. And isn't this illegal? I'm not hacking, Lucas insisted. I'm using Dad's own credentials that he shared with me. As for the money, I'm moving small amounts back through a series of transfers that can't be easily traced. If I tried to move it all at once, they'd notice. He showed me a complex flowchart of transactions carefully planned to recover the funds without alerting Jeffrey and Alicia. The most important part, Lucas continued, was getting Alicia to reveal their exact location. I posed as Emma, the other scammer, and suggested a partnership. I convinced her to share details about where they're staying by pretending I had a contact in the same city. I stared at my grandson, torn between admiration and terror. Lucas, I don't even know what to say. You're 13. You should be playing video games and riding bikes, not tracking down international criminals. They hurt you, Grandma, he said simply. Nobody hurts my family. The next day, before I could decide whether to put a stop to Lucas's activities, my phone rang. It was Detective Jackson. Mrs. Carter, we've had a development, he said, his voice animated for the first time since I'd met him. Authorities in Argentina have identified accounts linked to your case. They've frozen several of them pending investigation. That's wonderful news, I said, thinking of Lucas's digital trail of breadcrumbs. There's more, Detective Jackson continued. We've received anonymous tips about your son and Miss Delgado's location. Very detailed tips, including hotel information and aliases they're using. Argentinian police are preparing to move in possibly within the next 48 hours. After I hung up, I confronted Lucas again. Did you send anonymous tips to the police? He nodded, not looking remotely guilty. Someone had to. They weren't making progress fast enough. That evening, another deposit appeared in my account, $20,000 this time. The combined recoveries now totaled just over $50,000, about 13% of what had been stolen. It's not all coming back this way, Lucas admitted when I showed him the latest deposit. Most of it's locked in accounts the authorities have frozen. But I wanted to get you enough to cover the mortgage and immediate expenses. I reached out and hugged my grandson tightly. Lucas, what you've done is incredible. But I'm worried about you. This burden shouldn't be on your shoulders. I'm not burdened, he said with surprising maturity. I'm good at this, Grandma. Really good. And it feels right using my skills to help family. Just then, my phone rang. The screen showed an international number. Lucas and I stared at each other, both knowing who it might be. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. They're getting desperate, Lucas said quietly. That's a good sign. The knock on my door came at 7:15 a.m. I was already awake, having slept fitfully all night. Lucas had told me to expect news soon based on the panicked messages Alicia Daniela had been sending to his fake personas. Still seeing Detective Jackson on my doorstep so early sent my heart racing. May I come in, Mrs. Carter? He asked. His expression was unreadable, but there was an energy to him that hadn't been there before. I ushered him into the living room where Lucas was already sitting, his laptop open beside him. Detective Jackson raised an eyebrow at my grandson's presence but didn't object. I have news, he said, settling into my armchair. Jeffrey Carter and Daniela Morales were apprehended by Argentinian authorities yesterday evening at a hotel in Buenos Aires. Despite having anticipated this moment, hearing it spoken aloud made my knees buckle. I sank onto the couch. They're in custody, I whispered. Yes, they're being held pending extradition hearings. Argentina has agreed to cooperate fully with U.S. authorities. And the money? I asked. Financial investigators have located approximately $230,000 in frozen accounts. There's a good chance most of that will be recovered, though the process may take some time. They appear to have spent the rest already luxury hotels, first-class travel, expensive shopping. I nodded numb. More than half my life savings was gone forever, but a significant portion might be returned. It was better than I dared hope. Detective Jackson pulled out his notebook. What's curious about this case is how they were found. The Argentinian authorities received extremely detailed information, anonymous tips that included banking records, hotel reservations made under false names, even photographs taken in the last 48 hours. He glanced pointedly at Lucas. It was almost as if someone had been monitoring their every digital move. Lucas kept his expression neutral, but I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. That's fortunate, I said carefully. Very, Detective Jackson agreed. Mrs. Carter, I've been in law enforcement for 26 years. I know when there's more to a story than I'm being told. I'm not here to ask questions I don't want the answers to. I just want you to know that whatever methods were used to track these individuals, they've resulted in a successful arrest and the recovery of stolen funds. He handed me a card with a number written on the back. Jeffrey has been granted a phone call. He asked to speak with you. This is the number to reach him at the detention facility if you wish to talk to him. After Detective Jackson left, Lucas and I sat in silence for several minutes processing the news. Are you going to call Dad? Lucas finally asked. I stared at the card in my hand. I don't know. What would I even say to him? You don't have to decide now, Lucas said gently. Later that afternoon, the phone rang again, the same international number from the day before. This time, I answered. Mom! Jeffrey's voice was thin and frightened. Mom, I've made a terrible mistake. That's quite an understatement, I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. You have to believe me. I didn't know what she was planning, he pleaded. Daniela, she told me it was just a short-term loan that we'd pay you back double from our investments. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. You transferred money from my accounts, Jeffrey. Accounts you knew were my retirement savings. She said it was an emergency, that if we didn't move quickly, we'd lose the opportunity. Mom, you have to help me. The lawyer they've assigned me says I could face serious charges. Tell them I had permission to access your accounts. I closed my eyes, pain washing over me. I can't do that, Jeffrey. You didn't have permission. Mom, please, I'm your son. Yes, you are. And that makes this betrayal even worse. There was silence on the line, then Jeffrey's voice changed, becoming harder. How did they find us? Nobody knew where we were. Did you hire some kind of investigator? Before I could answer, Lucas, who had been listening beside me, pressed the speakerphone button and spoke. I found you, Dad. Lucas. Jeffrey sounded genuinely shocked. What are you talking about? I tracked your IP addresses. I followed your money transfers. I created fake identities to get information from Daniela. I'm the one who told the police where to find you. That's impossible. Jeffrey scoffed. You're just a kid. A kid who knows more about digital security than you do, Lucas replied calmly. You should have used better passwords, and you shouldn't have logged into your email from hotel Wi-Fi. There was another long silence. Then Jeffrey's voice, now desperate. Lucas, buddy, you have to help me. Tell Grandma this was all a misunderstanding. I never meant to steal from her. I have helped you, Lucas said. I found you before you could disappear with all of Grandma's money, and I have the recordings. What recordings? Jeffrey and I asked simultaneously. Every call and video chat you and Daniela had in the last 2 months. I accessed your cloud storage with your password. I have you discussing the plan to take Grandma's money, dividing up percentages, planning where you'd go afterward. I sent copies to Detective Jackson yesterday. I stared at my grandson in shock. This was information he hadn't shared with me. You're bluffing, Jeffrey said, but his voice had lost all confidence. The file is called Retirement Plan Discussion in your Google Drive. It's dated March 18th. You and Daniela are sitting on your couch. She says, and I quote, "Once we have your mother's accounts emptied, we'll move everything offshore." And you say, "She'll never even notice until we're long gone." The line went dead. Jeffrey had hung up. I turned to Lucas speechless. He closed his laptop and looked at me steadily. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I didn't tell you about the recordings because I knew it would hurt you to hear Dad planning this. But he knew exactly what they were doing. It wasn't a misunderstanding." As the reality of my son's willing participation in the theft sank in, I felt a strange calm replace the turmoil of the past weeks. The uncertainty was gone. Jeffrey had made his choices, and now he would face the consequences. 2 days later, Detective Jackson called again. The financial investigators had recovered an additional $80,000 from accounts in Daniela's name. Combined with what Lucas had already recovered, I would get back approximately $150,000, a little less than 40% of what had been stolen. The rest was likely gone forever, spent on luxury hotels, designer clothes, and whatever else my son and his criminal girlfriend had splurged on during their brief time as wealthy fugitives. "There's something else you should know," Detective Jackson added. "Daniela Morales is wanted in connection with similar scams in 4 countries. Your case helped break open a much larger investigation. She's facing serious charges, not just here, but internationally." "And my son?" I asked. "He's cooperating with authorities, which may reduce his sentence. But Mrs. Carter, I need to ask your intentions regarding pressing charges." It was the question I'd been dreading. Could I send my only child to prison? "I need time to think about it," I told him. That night, Lucas found me sitting in the dark on the back porch, staring at the garden Frank had planted so many years ago. "You're wondering if you should press charges against Dad," he said, sitting beside me. "How can I send my own son to jail?" I whispered. "But how can I not? He stole my life savings, Lucas. He left me with nothing." "Not nothing," Lucas said quietly. "You have me." I reached out and took his hand. This extraordinary child wise beyond his years had become my unexpected hero. "What do you think I should do?" I asked him. Lucas thought for a moment before answering. "I think Dad needs to face consequences. Not because you want to punish him, but because that's how people learn. That's how they change." In that moment, hearing the wisdom in my grandson's words, I knew what I had to do. Jeffrey needed to face the consequences of his actions, not just for justice's sake, but for his own. Sometimes, the most loving thing a parent can do is allow their child to experience the results of their choices. The media caught wind of the story a few days later. 13-year-old cyber detective brings down international scammers was the headline in the local paper. Reporters called and emailed wanting interviews with Lucas. I refused them all, determined to protect him from unwanted attention. "You don't want to be famous?" I asked him after turning away yet another reporter. Lucas shook his head. "I didn't do it to be famous. I did it for you, Grandma." The legal proceedings began against both Jeffrey and Daniela. My son's attorney negotiated a plea deal contingent on my agreement. Jeffrey would serve 3 to 5 years for fraud and theft, with the possibility of earlier release for good behavior. It was less than he deserved, but I agreed to the terms. The day I signed the papers formalizing the charges against my own son was the hardest day of my life, harder even than Frank's funeral. But as Lucas had said, actions must have consequences. And perhaps facing those consequences would give Jeffrey a chance to become the man I had raised him to be rather than the thief he had become. 6 months have passed since that morning Detective Jackson appeared on my doorstep with news of Jeffrey's arrest. Life has settled into a new normal, one very different from what I had expected for my retirement years, but with its own unexpected joys. My financial situation has stabilized, though I'll never again have the security I once took for granted. The recovered funds combined with my pension allow me to keep my home and cover basic expenses. I've taken a part-time job at the local library shelving books 3 afternoons a week. The work is easy on my aging body, and the extra income helps bridge the gap left by my depleted savings. Jeffrey is serving his sentence at a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. After much soul-searching, I decided to maintain contact with him. I visit once a month, our conversations awkward but gradually becoming more honest. He's enrolled in counseling and educational programs seeming genuinely remorseful, though I remain cautious about fully trusting him again. Forgiveness, I'm learning, is a process, not an event. The most significant change in my life is Lucas. After lengthy discussions with Amanda, we agreed that Lucas would live primarily with me during the school year. His mother recognized how much he had thrived in my care during the crisis and the special bond that had formed between us. She visits frequently, and Lucas spends holidays and summer breaks with her, an arrangement that works well for everyone. Lucas continues to impress and occasionally alarm me with his technical abilities. His role in capturing Daniela and recovering my funds attracted attention from several technology companies and cybersecurity firms. He now has mentors, professionals who recognize his exceptional talent and provide guidance on both skills and ethics. One company even offered him a paid internship for the summer, carefully structured to be appropriate for a 14-year-old. Together, Lucas and I have found purpose in our experience by helping others. We've developed a presentation about financial scams targeting seniors, which we deliver at community centers and libraries around the county. Lucas explains the technical aspects of how scammers operate online, while I share the emotional reality of being victimized. The first time I told our story publicly was terrifying, but the gratitude of those who learned from our experience made the vulnerability worthwhile. "You're saving people from going through what we did, Grandma," Lucas told me after one particularly emotional presentation. "That's turning something awful into something good." Our home has transformed as well. The spare bedroom is now officially Lucas's room, decorated with coding books and computer equipment instead of the guest room furnishings that previously filled it. We converted the small den into my bedroom, allowing Lucas to have the larger space for all his projects. These changes symbolize our new family arrangement, unconventional, but filled with love. The process of redefining family has been one of my most profound lessons from this experience. The son I raised, who I thought would be my support in old age, betrayed me in the worst possible way. Yet his son, my grandson, stepped into the breach with courage and loyalty I never could have imagined. Family, I've learned, isn't always who you expect it to be. I've also discovered strengths in myself I didn't know existed. At 67, I thought my life was largely settled, my character fully formed. Instead, I've had to reinvent myself, adapt to financial constraints, learn new job skills, become an educator on fraud prevention, and step into the role of primary caregiver for a teenage boy. Each challenge has revealed resilience I didn't know I possessed. Lucas has taught me to appreciate both digital and emotional intelligence. In our technology-focused world, his technical skills proved vital, but it was his emotional wisdom, his understanding of justice, consequences, and family loyalty that truly saved us. He navigates both realms with a maturity that continually astonishes me. This morning, Lucas and I planted a garden in the backyard. Frank's original garden had withered during the weeks I was too devastated to care for it. Now we're creating something new together. Vegetables, herbs, and flowers in a design Lucas researched online for maximum yield in our climate. As we worked side by side, Lucas suddenly asked, "Are you still sad about the money we couldn't get back, Grandma?" I considered his question carefully before answering. "I wish we had recovered it all. That money represented decades of hard work by your grandfather and me. But focusing on what's lost doesn't help us move forward. Lucas nodded thoughtfully, patting soil around a tomato seedling. Dad sent me a letter from prison. He said when he gets out, he wants to pay you back everything he took. That would be nice, I said, not wanting to express my doubts about Jeffrey's ability or true commitment to making restitution. I told him I'd help him figure out how, but only if he's really serious. Lucas continued. And only if he proves to you that he's changed. I looked at my wise, compassionate grandson, his hands dirty from creating new life in our garden, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. My retirement fund may never fully recover, but my heart has grown richer than I ever thought possible, thanks to a boy who taught his grandmother that age has nothing to do with wisdom, and that sometimes, when life falls apart, it makes space for something stronger to be built. Have you ever experienced a betrayal by someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story touched your heart. Remember, sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our greatest strengths and the most unlikely heroes. Thank you for listening, and may you find the wisdom to turn your own painful experiences into something beautiful.